Professor Acharya Veeranara and Pandurangi, another Shastra side senior star of the symposium. Actually, that doesn't do much justice to Professor Pandurangi's tall, colossal, giant scholarship. But be that as it may, he has volunteered to speak towards the end. He recently came up with a Rigveda Bhashya, and he is a very rare combination like all these young scholars. He too is well versed on both sides. He is very well aware of the Indology groups, interpretations, criticisms, and their analysis. And he actually started an email group called Bharatiya Vidvat Parishad now, which has become a full-fledged registered body of Sanskrit scholars. And that he did out of his thinking that we have to have a parallel local Bharatiya group of scholars who can do things at a level which is equally rigorous as the Indological group. And his pratigna in that group is that without evidence, nothing should be shared. Without good argument, nothing should be shared. We should have every presentation well substantiated with full references, with wonderful arguments and all that. Then only we'll be matching with the rigor with which Indology scholars present their arguments. Today, Professor Pandurangi, he is the dean at Karnataka Sanskrit University, which is there in Bengaluru. He is a traditional Nyaya scholar and scholar of Advaita Vedanta. And he commands many traditional Shastras. Today, he is going to present his talk on a controversial article that was written by an Indologist who is known for his focus on Dharmashastra. He wrote a popular piece. It's a popular piece only in the print online magazine. During the Rama Pratishtha at Ayodhya, that Dharmashastras are actually opposed to temple worship and temples and idols and all that. He countered that in a very short piece. At that time, he was saying that he needs more space and more argument and more time to present all the evidences and arguments he has in countering this position taken by Patrick Olivelle. Professor Pandurangi, over to you.
Thanks for Professor Aduri sir, who is our guiding force, both in my personal life and for the many people who are working on the Sanskrit studies all over the India. Now, the article written by Professor Patrick Olivelle was published on 17th January 2024, just before the Prana Pratishtha ceremony of Rama Mandira. The 24th was the Prana Pratishtha day, but however, it was published on 17th, and it was not a mistake of Professor Patrick Olivelle, as he claimed that timing was chosen by the editor rather than Professor Patrick's article. So he said what he wrote for the print magazine is that large-scale temples did not exist before 500 Common Era. 500 CE. That means there were temples, but the large scale temples that we see today were absent before the 500 CE. There were many temples, small temples were there, but largely the culture of temple culture was absent all over the India. That was his claim. And myself and my colleague Dr. Srinidhi, we wrote a response opinion to the Professor Patrick Olivelle's article on the print, and it was also printed there. And to which Professor Patrick again responded positively. So that thing is again now taken for the discussion now. So I will share what Professor Patrick Olivelle has written and what we wrote against this thing. I hope everybody will be able to enjoy it, though the time is very much late. We are in the last stage of our presentation, but however, I would like to give all the presentation. So it is the what Professor Patrick Olivelle, his main theme of that article in the print was that large-scale temples did not exist before 500 CE. But at the same time, he made a great damaging claim that Dharmashastras oppose temples, to which we responded. We did not respond to the Patrick Olivelle's main thesis that large-scale temples did not exist before 500 CE, but our response was about whether Dharmashastras opposed temples or not. It is a clear case of misleading people. That is what I want to show today. So he started with his claim, time travel. Imagine, it is all read is the quotation of what Professor Patrick Olivelle has written. Imagine you are transported in time travel in India before the Common Era. You are not seeing the temples and asking your guide, where have all the temples gone? The guide was puzzled. He had no idea what you are talking about. What is a temple? He asked. It means the people who lived before the Common Era did not have the idea of temples. And he said there were no Hindu temples. Hindu traditions existed for over 1,000 years before the need to construct temples was felt. That means around 500 CE, there was a strong necessity felt for the construction of large-scale temples, big temples. But before that need was felt, around for 1,000 years, maybe 1,000 years, maybe 1,500 years or 2,000 years, the Hindu traditions existed, but there was no temples. This is the story of Hindu temples. In the most ancient period, there was probably no term at all. There was no term for the temple at all. Vedic rituals were performed in the purpose-built temporary structures called the Yajnashala. So it was his thesis. So he is thinking, or he is trying to make us believe that there were no temples elsewhere in the country before 500 CE or the Common Era. Of course, it seems to be so for the superficial review. We have references to the Yajnashalas in the Raghumsha. If you see Raghumsha, when the Dilipa and Sudakshina they traveled to the Vasishtha's ashrama, there is a description of the way, the countryside, how they went. They saw so many people there, here and there, and all the forests, etc. There is a description, and there is also description about um, the villages which had the signs of Yupa, and the villages were given to the Brahmanas by this Raghum kings. So the Brahmanas stayed in those villages, and they had made all the yupas and all other samagri for the big scale yajnas. So the gramas had the yupa chinna. So that was the situation. There was no kind of temples as we see now. When we travel along the countryside, we find temples here and there. But earlier, when Dilip and Sudakshina went, they had seen only the Yupa Chinha, not the temples like that. And the comparison will be more apparent when we see the description of the Sarayu, the banks of Sarayu, especially when we imagine today's Sarayu bank. Everywhere there are temples dotting the banks. But however, when Kusha he comes back to the Sarayu or Ayodhya, because of the Ayodhya Devata's request that my city is um, it is empty now. Please come back to the Ayodhya. It is requested by the Devata, Ayodhya Devata. So he came back to the Ayodhya, and he say the Kalidasa says rather Vedic Pratishthan Vidatadharanam Yupan Apashyat Shatasho Raghunam. Now we see hundreds of temples along the banks of Sarayu, but Kusha, the son of Rama, he saw only hundreds of Yupas there on the banks of Sarayu. So it seems that there were no temples at the time, though these two verses are not quoted by Professor Patrick Olivelle. I am quoting it to the understanding for people. So now he said, to substantiate his main claim that there were no temples in the country before 500 CE, he made a thesis that the mainstream Brahmanical literary tradition of Dharmashastras ignored or even actively opposed temple-based religious and ritual activities. It is his claim. The activities recommended or enjoyed by these texts were not meant to be carried out within a temple. The Dharmashastras, especially the Dharmashastras like Manusmriti, Ajnavalkya etc., etc., and also the Grhyasutras, they ignored the temple-based religious and ritual activities, and he went to claim that even these texts they actively opposed these temple-based religious activities. So it is very clear that temples were not part of the Hindu religion or Vedic religion before that period. It was his intention or his lakshya, his dhvani. So to quote again Professor Patrick, he says, if you take the Vishnu Smriti take the example of Vishnu Smriti, that Vishnu Smriti opposes temples because Vedic recitation should not be conducted in a temple, in a cemetery, at a crossroad, or on a road. So Vishnu Smriti says, so Vedic recitation should not be carried out in a temple or a cemetery or a crossroad or a road. So the placing a temple next to a cemetery is telling, it is very clear. What Vishnu Smriti says is, na devatayatana smashana chatushpatha ratyasu vedamadhita. It is there. So you should not, Vedic recitation should not be carried out in temple. That means the temple is not a place for the Vedic recitation. It is non-Vedic. He seems to convey to convey this hidden message. So placing a temple next to a cemetery, it is like a cemetery smashana. Devatayatana smashana chatushpatha. Chatushpatha is a crossroad and Rathya is a road. So the Vedic recitation should not be carried out in these places. It means that Devatayatana is equal to smashana. So it is not a pavitra sthala for the Vedic people. It is what he wants to imply here. And he quotes one of the greatest persons of Dharmashastra, that is Dr. P.V. Kane, who said that it strikes one as somewhat strange that none of the principal Grihya and Dharmasutras contain any procedures of the consecrating an image in a temple. P.V. Kane observed that though there may be references to the temples, but there is absence of temple consecrations. The prana pratishtha vidhi is absent in all these Dharmashastras, Dharmasutras, and also Grhyasutras. So this is the opinion of P.V. Kane, and again the Patrick Olivelle says that reason for this strange silence is clear. These texts of mainstream Brahmanism, again we have to make the text Brahmanism, the word Brahmanism into bracket. It is the it is a term coined by these people. So the texts of mainstream Brahmanism were not interested in temples or what goes what goes on in them. They viewed them with suspicion and disdain. That means these mainstream Brahmanical texts, Dharmasutras and Grhyasutras, they viewed these temples and temple-based activities with suspicion and disdain. It is the claim of Professor Patrick Olivelle. So now we will see. So what really these Dharmashastras mean and what they contain. That is very important thing here. So it is the question where Veda should be taught, where the Vedic recitation should be done, where Veda should be studied. That is the question, because the Vishnu Smriti, the exact sentence is Na adhita ahoratram chaturdashi ashtami shucha na ritvantara grahasutake na indra prayane navati chandapavane, etc., etc. And then comes the na devata aitana smashana chatushpatha ratyasu. For the brevity, I have excluded all other things. So the Vishnu Smriti is clear where Vedadhyana should be done. It is not simply about the recitation of Veda. So recitation, when he says, Patrick says that it is the recitation of Vedas, it is wrong interpretation or misunderstanding of the na adhita, because it is the question of adhyana, where Veda should be taught or where Veda should be understood or taken by the students. So it is very clear. It is the Gurukulas. In the Gurukulas, the Veda should be studied. In houses, maybe where Guru stayed, or in the schools for that purpose, it is very clear. It is not temple. Temple is not meant for the study of Vedadhyana. It is the Gurukula that is the place of Vedadhyana. So it does not mean temple-based activities were opposed by the Smritis. It is like to say that one should not be taught mathematics in a temple. Where should be where mathematics should be taught? Mathematics should not be taught in a temple, a cemetery, or busy junction, or a road. And where should be taught? Where should the mathematics be taught? The mathematics should be taught in a tuition house for the modern people, or maybe in the school or in a gurukula in the earlier time. It is the same thing. Where should one sleep? Where should he sleep? One should sleep in in his own house, not certainly in a school or a cemetery or a temple. One should sleep in house or a hotel. It is very simple. It is given. It is written in the Vishnu Smriti. Na ardrapadah supyat, na uttarapara na nagnaha, na smashana shunyalaya devataitaneshu. You should not sleep in the smashana or shunyalaya or devataitana. Shunyalaya means it is a empty house. One should not sleep there. It is very clear. Such prohibitions are found everywhere elsewhere in the Vishnu Smriti. Na ashtami chaturdashi panchadashi ishu striyam upayat. When one should have this intercourse with women, not certainly on these days mentioned here, and not certainly in the Devataitana, Smashana, and Shunyalaya. So, in the same manner, the Vedadhyana should not be carried out in the temple, because temple is meant for the public. It is not a school. That was very much clear. Earlier, when we did not find a school, then such Vedadhyanas were carried out in the temples also. That is another matter. So again, he says that these texts of mainstream Brahmanism were not interested in temples or what goes on in them. They viewed them with suspicion and disdain. The religion and rituals of mainstream Brahmanism were domestic, solidly based in the home. It is what his opinion is there. But he says the important thing is that he says the Dharmashastra texts viewed temples or temple-based activities with disdain and suspicion. That is very important thing. Suspicion. What kind of suspicion? Now, what Vishnu Smriti has to say about the temples, we can say it. We can see it. There are many references. At least 12 references are found in the Vishnu Smriti. It is full of praise of temples. Abhakshasya avikrayasya vikrayi deva pratima vibhedakasya uttama sahasam dandaniya. The person who destroys the deva pratima should be given a very high kind of penalty or danda. And he says, so the person who breaks the deva pratima, the person or the people who want to get money or find money inside in the temples, etc., they should be given such a very harsh punishment. And Sachela Snanamahoya, Sachela Snatamahoya, Suryode Uposhitam, Karayat Sarva Divyani, Deva Brahmana Sannidho. There is a kind of Divya Vidhi that should be done in the Deva Brahmana Sannidhi. And we find many references to that. Ugran Devan Samabhircha Tatsnana Udakat Prasatit Trayam Pibet. Idam Maya Nakritam. It is not done by me, he should say. Then if nothing happens, nothing bad happens to them, that person is declared as not guilty. That kind of references are found in Vishnu Smriti. Chatushpatham Pradakshani Kuryat. One should do Pradakshana Parikrama of the Chatushpatha and also the Devatarcha. Chatushpatham Pradakshani Kuryat. Now it is very interesting. We have to do a Pradakshana around a circle in a city. So there are many references. Athatah susnatah sukshalita suprakshalita panipadah swachantah devatarchayam sthaleva bhagavantam anadinidhanam vasudevam abhyarchayet. Either you should do it on the floor or in the devatarcha, devata vigraha. One should worship Vasudeva. देवतायतनकारी यस्य देवस्य आयतनं करोति तस्यैव लोकमाप्नोति. The person who builds a temple for particular devata, he will attain that loka of that particular devata. So there are many references are Deva Nirmal Apanayinat, Godana Phalam Apnoti, Deva Graha Marjanat, Tadupalepanat, he Godana Phalam Apnoti. So there are so many references are there. And Vishnu says in the Vishnu Smriti, Vasam Yatharke cha Nishakare cha, I stay in Devaleshu and Dhvajabhushiteshu. The last it is found. So the Vishnu Smriti is full of references to the Devalayas. So it is not seeing this temples with suspicion and disdain. And if we see other Grhyasutras, we find many references. Though Grhyasutras are not primarily about temple-based rituals, the Grhyasutras are describing the rituals or the kriyas, the vidhis that should be done in homes. That's why they are called Grhyasutras. And the Shrauta Sutras are to describe only the highest ritual activities, the Agnihotra, Darsha Purnamasa, etc., which have nothing to do with the temples. So either Grihya Sutras or Shrauta Sutras, they have nothing to do with the temples actually, because they are describing the vidhi, karma vidhis, which are to be carried out in a house. That's why they are called Grihya Sutras. But still, I find many references to these temples in the Grihya Sutras. For example, Vaikhanasa Grihya Sutra speaks Grihe Devatayataneva Bhaktya Bhagavantam Narayanam Archayet. And Laugaksha Grihya Sutra, he has to take a shakha to give it to the Kanya. And that Kanya should end or should throw it or she should leave it in a sthavara udaka or shuchauva devatayatane. That is what Laugaksha Grihya Sutra says. And Kaushika Grihya Sutra says it is about the Upanishkramana. The child is taken to temple or anywhere outside his home in the 4th month of the childbirth. So this text says, Sthalipagase hutva brahmanan swastivachya purvam devatayatanam gatva satapatraha kumaraha sugrad grahanicha. One child should be taken to the Devatayatana and his friend's house. That is the Upanishkramana. Atha tataha pariyeti atha brahmana bhojanam. And Shankhayana Grihya Sutra says, Apramattaha aranye devakule agnihotreva uposasva. You should stay in the Devakula. So the Devakula is a reference to the Devatayatana. And in the same manner, na nagnaha na apahitapanihi Devatayatana pradakshanam kuryat. You should have pradakshana of Devayatana. It is found in the Shankayana Grihya Sutra. And again, we have many reference to the Devayatana in the Apastamba Grihya Sutra. Yadyarcha dahyedva nashedva prapatedva prabhajedva prahasedva prachaledva. It is about the it is the references of Manava Grihya Sutra. Yadyarcha dahyedva. If the pratima made for the worship is either it is burnt or it is destroyed or it is fallen down or it is broken or prahasedva, it is also very important. Sometimes at the time of a very great difficulty, when something is happening to the country, the Devata Pratimas, they used to laugh. Sometimes they used to shed tear also. That we find such descriptions in the later part. So again, it is the Manava Grihya Sutra, and Apastamba Grihya Sutra says, Aparenagnim dve kuti krutva. It is the Grihya Sutra besides our Agni, one has to make two small hut-like structures, and we have to make avahana of the devata. Uttaraya dakshinasyaam ishanam avahayati laukikya vacha uttarasyam meedushim madhye jayantam. So one person is calling the devata to reside there. What Anakula Vyakya says, Murtiman iha gacha iti dhyayet. So that is the avahana. The whole the devata pratima and devata puja is based on the avahana. Avahana and visarjana are the two most important things for the murti puja. So that is found in the Apastamba Grhyasutra. And Bodhayana Grhyasutra we find Atha Upanishkramya Bhahyani Chitriyani Abhyarchya. Again, it is about the Upanishkramana of the child. Bhahyani Chitriyani Abhyarcha. He has to worship the many the Devatarchas in the temples there. Then he has to come back. Chitriyani Deva Lingani. It means. And अप्राप्य देवता प्रत्यवरोहेत संप्रति ब्राह्मणान मध्ये गाः अभिक्रम्य पितॄन्. It is what Paraskara Sutra says. अप्राप्य देवता प्रत्यवरोहेत. When he is riding Ratha, he should immediately step down from the Ratha before he reaches the Devata Sthana. So that is also a very important thing. And if we take the Grhyasutra Sheshas, there are so many references are found in the, and how to make Pratishtha, etc., etc. Athato Vishnu Pratishtha Kalpam Vyakhyasama, so many Devata Pratishthas are found in the Bodhayana Grhyasutra and all other Grhyasutra Sheshas. Snana, Aditya Upasthapana, Tarpana, Japa, Yajna, Graha, Devatarchaneshu, Graha Devatarchana, Vaishvadev, Panchamahayajna, etc., etc. Gramasya Devatayatanasya, Grahasya, Sardama Kshetreshu, Bhudimichan, Devatayatane, Biladaryoha Nivaset. Where sannyasi should stay. Parvata, Guha, Nadi, Pulina, Shunyagare, Devatayatane. The sannyasi should stay in the Parvatas, Guhas, and Nadis, and Pulina, Nadi Pulina, on the banks of rivers and Shunyagara, because he has given up the sannyasa. He has given up his house, so he should not stay in his house. He should stay in all the outside the village or town. So Devatayatane Biladaryoha Nivaset. He should, where a sannyasi should stay, he should stay in Devatayatana. That is very important. So you find many such references to the Grhyasutra Shesha, Grhyasutra Parishishtas. There is no question. And even if we take the Smriti Granthas like Manusmriti, Brihaspati Smriti, and Parashara, Yajnavalkya, etc., Manusmriti is very clear. Sema Sandhishu Karyani Devatayatana Incha. In the Devatayatana should be established in the Sema Sandhishu Karyani. When in a boundary of two villages or two towns or something like that, that is outside the village or temple, because the Devatayatana is a very sacred place. It should be maintained in a very high Shuddhi. So it should not be inside the temple. That is the intention. Even now many temples are stationed outside the village and the cities, but because of the modern rush, we find all the temples occupied or in the midst of these villages now. That is another issue. So, Kosthagara, Ayudhagara, Devatagara, Bhedakan, Hanyadeva Vicharayan, the person who destroys these Devatagaras should be immediately killed. This is what Manusmriti says. And Parashara says, Mrigapakshi Ninadadhyam Devatayatana Vratam Yaksha Gandharva Siddhesha Nritya Gita Alankritam. There is a reference to this Devatayatanas. And Parashara, he says, Prayashchitam Tada Dadyat Devatayatana Krataha. Prayashchitta should be done in front of Devatas. And Yajnavalkya says again, it is about the Divya Vidhi, Devanugran Samabhyacha Tasnanodakam Aharet. It is in the Ugradevas, in front of Ugradevas, it is what says. And Gautama Dharma Sutra. न वायुवग्नि विप्र आदित्य आपो देवता गाश्च प्रतिपश्यन् वा मूत्र पुरीश मेध्यान् व्युदस्येत् नैता देवता प्रति पादो प्रसारयेत्. Should not put his feet in front of devatas. He should not make them against these devatas. It is what meant here. प्रशस्त मंगल्य देवतायतन चतुष्पदम प्रदक्षिणम आवर्तेत. Gautama Dharma Sutra says they should do pradakshina of the prashasya mangalya devatayatana and chatushpada also. And Bodhayana Dharma Sutra says, Atha eke bruvate smashanamapo devagraham goshtam yatra cha abrahmanaha aprakshalya pado tanna praveshtavyam. One should not enter yatra cha brahmana. I have read it in the wrong way. So the one person should not enter the smashana or the tirtha kshetra or devagraha without washing his feet, or the place where brahmanas reside. He should not enter that place without washing his feet. Antarjale devagrihe valmiki मूषिकस्थले कृतशौच अवशिष्टा वा न ग्राह्यः पंचमृत्तिकाः. One should not take the mritika from the devagraha, what he says. And Vishnu Dharma Sutra, again it is very clear. Margashirsha Shukla Ekadasham Upavashitah Dvadashyam Bhagavantam Vasudevam Archayet. So what is Archana? Archana is not simply Manasik Archana. It is Pushpa, Dhupa, Anulepana, Deepa, Naivedya. And there is also Vidhi for the Abhisheka. So if there is no Pratima, there is no temple, then there is no question of Pushpa, Dhupa, Deepa, Anulepana, etc., etc. Now, that is Vishnu Smriti, Vishnu Dharma Sutra says, Ghratena Bhagavantam Vasudevam Snapayitva Gandha Pushpa Dhupa Deepa Naivedyadhivir Abhyarchya. See, very clear. Paushi Chet Pushyukta Syat Tasyam. One person on the Pushyamasa, he should worship the Vishnu. Ghratena Bhagavantam Vasudevam Snapayitva. He should be done, given Abhishek of Ghrata. That is what it says. So it is very clear that the Smrtis, they contain numerous references to the temples. So though Dharmashastras, Grhyasutras, Dharmashastras and Shauta Sutras have nothing to do with temples or temple-based rituals, there are many references, but the temples fall into the area of Pancharatra Granthas, not in these Granthas. That should be kept in our mind. But still we find many references to the different texts. Chaitya Devatayatanam in the Charaka Samhita, Devatayatana Krida Prasad Paricharaka in the Natya Shastra, and Artha Shastra is very clear. There is a Devata Adhyaksha who has to take care of all the temples, and Durga Rashtra Devatana Vidhasam Ekastham Kosham Kuryat. Should not waste the money. ततः परम नगर राज देवता लोह मणिकारवः ब्राह्मणाः उत्तरां दिशम् अधिवसेयुः. Even if we take that Kautilya Arthashastra was written in 3rd century BCE, though I don't believe that dating, it is very much ancient, but still we can find many references to such Devatayatanas. Aparajita Pratihata Jayanta Vaishvadeva Jayanta Vaijayanta Goshthan Shiva Vaishravana Ashvi Shri Madhiragrahani cha Puramadhe Karayat. It is all found in the Kautilya Arthashastra. And Vruddhagargiya Vastu Shastra, which is still not published, but being edited by Professor R. N. Iyengar and his team, there is references to the temples. Ashramash Shiva Chaityascha Devatayatanayancha Hridascha Itranagana Bhumi Pracha Vigarahita. Pracha Vigarahita, there is some kind of confusion about this Pathantra. It will be clear when it is published. It is Vruddhagargya Jyotisha is placed for the time being around 500 before this common era. So we find such numerous references. And we found that Kalidasa is referring to the Upas or Yajnashalas, but he never referred to the temples on the banks of Ayodhya. But if we look at the Ramayana itself, then we find many such references. In the first Kanda, after the marriage of all these four girls, Mangalaalapanashchaiva, Mangala Alapanishchaiva, Shobhitaha, Kshomavasasah, Devata Ayatananyashu, Sarvastha, Pratyapujain. Sita, Urmila, all these girls, you're worshipping these Devata Ayatanas. And also, it is to the reference to the Rama himself. When Rama is to be given, Rama is to have the Rajyabhisheka tomorrow morning. Before that, he was staying at the Srimatyayatane Vishnu Shishye Naravaratmajaha. He slept on the day in the Srimati Ayatane Vishnu. There was a big temple in his house where he was staying there. It is not on a very big bed or something, but he has to spend that night before his Pattabhisheka in the temple. It is meant here. Sitabhra Shikarabheshu Devataitaneshu cha. Very clear, the Devataitanas, they were very big. Sita Abhra Shikarabheshu. They were like big clouds. Such references to Devataitanas is found in the Ramayana. Kvachit Chaitya Shatayar Jushtaha and Chaityanscha Sarvan Siddharthan Brahmanascha Namasyase. It is all found in the Ramayana. Forget the Brahmanical texts, even the Buddha texts also refer to the temples. Karvataka Prabdha Devataitane Ratrim Diva Samupagataha Tataha Pindapata Matitva Samblakshira Idam Devaitanam Diva Akiranam Divyavadana. कस्मिंश्चित् देवायतने अधिमुक्ताः तेषाम् अनुकम्पया मिथ्या दृष्टिः दुश्चरित प्रहाणाय तस्मिन् देवायतने उपपद्यते बोधिसत्त्वभूमि शुचो देशे प्रदेशे कर्तव्यं देवतायतनेन वा सर्वतथागत अधिष्ठान व्यूह सूत्र. So this thesis of Patrick Olivelle that temples were opposed or seen in suspicion by the Dharmashastra text is over. That theory cannot be held. Now, he has given one more reason, that there is a person called Devalika. That Devalika is a very bad person. He should not be invited for the Shraddha. So, who is Devalika? Devalika is a ritual specialist, the temple ritual specialist. So he is prohibited from Shraddhas. It means that ancient people, they saw temples in disdain and suspicion. It is what meant by Patrick Olivelle. So in red, his sentences, ritual specialists associated with the temples were called Devalika. They were despised by the authors of Dharmashastras. So Devalika is listed among those who should not be invited to an ancestral offering, Shraddha. Manu listing them between physicians and butchers. It is what Patrick Olivelle wrote. And if we find, if we see the Vishnu Smriti and the Manu Smriti, it's very clear. Hina adhikangan vivarchayet. Vikarmanscha. Baidalavartikan, Vrathalinginah, Nakshatrajivinah, Devalakamscha. The Devalika should not be invited for the Shraddha. Soma Vikrayane Vishtha Bhishache Puyashwanitam Nashtam Devalake Dattam Apratishtantu Varthushav. The Shraddha bhojana offered to the person who sells Soma It is like a vishtha, our mala. And if it is offered, if it is given to the a doctor, or it is like a pueshwanita, it is like offering blood to the person, but to the Pituras. Nashtam Devalake Dattam, which is offered to the Devalaka, it is Nashta. It is what Manusmriti says. So the Devalaka is placed between physician and butcher. It is what meant by Professor Patrick Olivelle. Now we have to see who is the Devalaka person. Um, the Patrick Olivelle says that Devalaka is mentioned in the Vishnu Smriti. So the Devalaka is very bad person associated with the temples, so the temples are bad. But Vishnu Smriti, at least it has at least 12 vidhis for the Deva Mandiras. How can it says the person who is working in temple should not be invited? So the Devalaka mentioned in the Vishnu Smriti is not the person who is related with temples. Um, so we have to see what Manusmriti has to say about the Devalaka and what the commentators on Manusmriti have to say about the Devalaka. In this reference, Chikitsakan Devalakan Mamsa Vikrayanastatha. So the Chikitsaka, the person who is doing Chikitsa for you, or the doctor, and the Devalaka and Mamsa Vikray, the butcher, they should be prohibited from Havya and Kavya. And also the, mm, the shopkeepers. It is what Manusmriti says. And here, Devalaka Kuluka, what he says is, Devalaha Pratima Paricharaka. So Devala, the Pratima Paricharaka, who is doing the temple activities, like doing puja to the temple and in the Pratima, etc., is called Devala. But the Devala who is doing Devata Pratima Paricharana for his livelihood, he is called Devalaka. Vartanartatvena etat karma kurvatah ayam nishedha na tu dharmartham. Suppose a pious person is there and he wants to do seva in the temple, he is welcome. But we should not take it archakatva as a vocation. It should not be for our livelihood. So the person who is doing this Pratima Puja for his livelihood is called as Devalaka. He is prohibited from these things. It does not mean that temples are seen in suspicion and disdain. And Kulluka is quoting Devala. Devakosha upabhoji cha namna devaluko bhavet. The person who uses the Devakosha, the money offered to the Devatas, is called as Devalaka. And there are many other references to the Devalaka in the different texts. And Yo Devam Pujayad Vidyarthi Vatsaratrayam, the person who worships a deity for the money, is called Devalaka. He should be prohibited. He should be ousted from the Havyas and Kavyas. It is what in Vaikhanasa Grhyasutra we find such references. And the more disturbing fact is Patrick Olivelle is saying that Devalaka is prohibited from the Havya Kavyas. So the temple is seen in the suspicion. But this very Patrick Olivelle, he says, who is Devalaka? We don't know. I quote him, the only term I have been able to discover relating to such liturgical specialist is Devalaka. It is absent in most ancient of legal texts, appearing first time in the Manu. The meaning of the term is not altogether clear. he says it is not altogether clear, but it must refer to a Brahmin who functioned in some way as a priest in a temple. That is what I quote. So he is using a ambiguous term to demean temples. So it is self-contradiction. It is the very big problem in the argument of Patrick Olivelle. And it may mean the Devalika is a gambler because Divakridayam. It also mean the gambler. So the gambler is prohibited from all these the auspicious activities like Havya and Kavya. It is very much clear. Yeah, this term is found in Gandavyaha Sutra, etc. also. Now we come to the Patrick Olivelle's another claim that temples were used to shelter wandering ascetics, not more than that. The most common function of a temple mentioned in early texts relates to the places where wandering ascetics spent the night. The Vasishtha Dharma Sutra gives a list: outskirts of a village, temple, abandoned house, foot of a tree. Similarly, the Vaikhanasa Dharma Sutra outside the village, and empty matha in a temple or in the foot of a tree where the ascetic sannyasi should reside. He should not spend his time in village. So, thus, early temples or shrines were generally located far from the villages and towns. Note again, however, that the only role the temple plays in the life of ascetic was temporary shelter for the night. Of course, this is the premises is good, is correct, but um, the conclusion is not good, because where should a sannyasi sleep in the night? In the morning, he should wander here and there. He should have bhiksha from the villages and people. And where should he spend the night? He should not spend his night in the village, in any householder's house, because he has given up his house. He is a sannyasi. Sannyasi should not stay in the house. So where should he sleep? He should sleep in temples. It is natural. And these temples were located far from the villages or temples. So aparigraha, mundaha, amamaha, aparigraha. Sapta agarani sankalpitani charayat bhiksham. He should ask for the alms from 7 houses. So he has no parigraha, he has no house for himself. Where should he stay in the night? Gramante devagrahe shunyagareva vrikshamuleva. That is the only option. So the reason is that sannyasi should stay in the temple. It is the reason. Conclusion is that temple is not a good place. That conclusion is wrong, whereas the premise of the argument is okay. And Patrick Olivelle says the religious life was as diverse from the temple as that of an ideal householder depicted in the Dharmashastras. Even after the arrival of the temple, religious activities prescribed by Dharmashastras continued and still continue to be carried out within the home. Of course, it is what I said. The Grihya karmas, they should be carried out in the home. That's why they are called Grihya karmas. For suppose a child is born and we have to do Namakarana, the Namakarana should be done in home. It should not be carried out in a temple or in matha. Then it will not be Grihya karma. So the temples, they fall into the area of Pancharatra texts or Shaivagama texts, not in the Grhyasutras or Dharmasutras or Shauta Sutras. It is very clear. So Now we finish the reference to the Dharmashastras and all other Grhyasutras and come to the Vedic references to the Pratimas and temples. Whether there are references to the temples in Vedas or in all other places. We find one reference to temple, the palace of gods in the Rigveda. Bhojasedam Pushkaraneva Veshma Parishkritam Devamaneva Chitram. This is the Devamana, the palace of gods. That means these Vedic people, they had such imagination of or they had some kind of the knowledge of palaces of gods. And this translation is not made by me, it is Stephen Jamison. And we find one reference to the Jagannath temple in the Rigveda as interpreted by Acharya, not even me. Ado yaddaru plavate sindho pare apurusham. Because the Jagannath temple will get a new pratima every 12 years. The wood used to make this Jagannath and Balabhadra and Subhadra images is flown by the Samudra itself. So ado yaddaru plavate sindho pare apurusham. It is not by anybody. It is not made by anybody else, but it is coming to this beach. The Purushottamakhya Devata Shariram, Daru. It is Daru Nirmita Vigraha, Daru Nirmita Sharira of Purushottama. So Tadarabhasva Durahanaha. It is all not related to our present discussion. So you had to take refuge at the Daru given by this Samudra Raja, and you will be able to go to the Vishnu Loka. It is what meant by Acharya. And we have one very interesting reference to the our own Tirupati Venkateshwaralu in the Rigveda. Arai Kane Vikate Giringacha Sadhanve. Arai, the person who has no wealth, who is bereft of eyes, and Vikate, who is having very difficult body. You go to the Giri, to Giri of Shirimbitha, the person who has given refuge to the Shri also. So where you will be able to get over this kind of poverty, etc., etc. So such reference to Venkateshwara is found in the Rigveda and in the Atharva Parishishta, and Atharva Parishishta has so many references to the Devata Aitana. Bhumidohan Prakurvita Devata Aitaneshu cha Devata Aitanairvapi Prayata Sumahotsavaihi, etc., etc. And the references to the Devata Pratima, a solid kind of Vigraha of any Devata. It is not new in the Dharmashastras or in the Shaivagamas or Pancharatras Agamas, because such kinds of references to the Devata Sharira is found even in the Vedic Samhitas. The last sentence I quote, Shariram va etadagnehi yat chityah atma vaishvanaraha. The Agni is the Devata and he has a body here. The Chitya Atma Vaishvanara, the Vaishvanara Agni, the Vaishvanara fire, who is Pratishtita in the Chiti, the Garuda Chiti, etc. Big Chitis are made for the worship of Agni, and the Chiti itself, or the Vaishvanara who is there in the Chiti, himself is the body of the Agni. So the Ritviks, when they climb up these Chitis, they Karshni Upanahu Upamunchate. because they don't want to touch the body of God by their bare feet. So they use the chappals made with Krishnajana. So such kind of Devata Vigraha is found very much there in the all our Samhitas. And Yate Agni, Ayashaya, Rajashaya, Harashaya. The Agni's Vigraha made up of the Hiran, the gold, and Agni's Vigraha made up of Rajata. Agni's Vigraha made up of this iron. It is meant in the Taittiriya Samhita. Ayashaya tanuhu, Rajashaya tanuhu, Harashaya tanuhu. So they must have made such kind of pratima for the worship there in the very earlier time. And we have the Yajno vai Vishnu and Yadat Khalo vai Devanam Aparajitam Ayatanam Yad Yajnaha. It is the Vishnu's pratima. Yajna is the pratima of Vishnu. It is found in the Aitareya Brahmana and also in the Shatapatha Brahmana. Athayadam Atmanaha Pratimam Asrjata Yajjajnyam Tasmada Prajapatir Yajnaha. He created a pratima of himself. What is the pratima? That pratima is Yajna itself is the pratima of the God. So the idea of pratima is very much present in the very much earlier times. And if we take the Ramtapani Upanishad, Aham Sanhitastatra Pashana Pratimadishu and Sita Upanishad, etc., are very clear. And in the Shadvimsha Brahmana, we find Devatayatanani Prakampante, Daivata Pratimaha Hasanti, Rudanti, Gayanti. It is in the Adbhuta Brahmana when that prayashchitta should be done. When Devata Mandiras, they tremble because of some kinds of bhutkampa, etc. And when the Devata Pratimas, they cry, they laugh, and they shed tears, then we should understand there is something bad is going to happen. So that's why we find such references to such women, bad omens in Bhagavatas. Verudan Devalingani. Devalinga is very important word. Devalinga means it is a sign of God, something that is very natural sign. Nobody needs to do pratishtha for that thing. But that Devalinga is there, and that is natural. And such natural Devalingas, they used to shed tears in the time of bad omens. That is the bad omen of the bad times. It is found in the Bhagavata and also Shadvimsha Brahmana. Somalta is the body of the Somadevata. Rajanamahritya Payasavadrena Parivevishantya Krayat. Parivevishantya Akrayat. So one has to bring the Soma and Somaya Radni Ityadina Gandharikam Tattva Puja Karaniya and Naivedya should be done. Such references are found. So now we are coming to the conclusion. So if temples are so important, why there are not so many references, thousands of references to the temples in our early Vedic and the Dharmashastra literature? It is very important thing because there are two kinds of temples. The Devalingas are of two kinds. One is the natural presence is felt by people. There is no need to do any pratishtha or anything. It is Swayam Vyakta Kshetra. Such we find references to such things. Adyam Swayam Vyaktam Vidam Vimanam Rangasamnikam. Sri Rangam, Sri Mushna, Venkatadri, Shaligrama, Naimisha, Totadri Pushkara, and Badari Narayan. These are all, there are Ashtavame Murte Santi Swayam Vyakta Mahitale. They are all self-manifesting Devlingas. There is no need to bring any kind of Avahana, Visarjana, etc. So people, when they travel to that places, they feel presence of God. They feel some special presence of God there. That's why they do worship. They perform worship of God in such places. There is no need of pratishtha. So there was no question of pratishtha and all other different kinds of the procedures of worshipping, because such places were very rare. Not exactly, not very rare. The Brahmana Purana says there are 8 such Swayamyukta Kshetras, but there may be hundreds of Swayamyukta Kshetras, because everywhere we see such Swayamyukta Kshetras when Narasimha is manifesting himself, or or any other Devata is manifesting. So when Devata himself is manifesting, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yomi Bhaktya Prayachati, whatever that is offered, he will take, and he will bless us. That is very natural. There is no need to have a very long procedure for the puja and do all the Mangalarti, Naivedya, etc., etc., bring hundreds of people there. So such places of natural presence of God were found all over India from the very earlier times. Of course, Bharatavarsha is the place of gods. They are all self-manifesting here. So such places were there, and people used to go there and worship devatas there. But not common presence of such places were there. There was no such common presence. Everywhere on every street you find such a Swayamyukta Kshetra. No, that is not possible. So people, they wanted to, when time gradually changes, the people felt to have temples. So they created temples by Pratishta, by great people. But this Pratisthapana itself is the later happening, the later incident. So we find Devata Pratishtha Vidhi in the Grhyasutra Sheshas, Parishishta Sutras, not in the Grhyasutras. But whereas we find references to the Devatas in the Devata Mandiras in the Grhyasutras itself, that is very interesting point. And these things are very well described in different texts. The Krita Yuga only Dhyana is there, and Treta Yajna is there, and Dwapara we have the temples, and in the Kali Yuga we need not worry about even temples. Only we have to recite the name of God, that will help us. So the dharma is changing. Krita Yuga Dhyana is the dharma. Treta Yajna is the dharma. Dwapara, the Paricharya temple worship is the dharma. Kali Yuga only Hari Kirtana. And Bhagavata is very clear. Until a person sees God in every body or in every human or other animals, he should worship God in the Archa until he can see God everywhere or in his own Hridaya. So, Archayam eva haraye pujam me shraddhaya hate. The person who wants to perform worship God in Archa Vigraha only, he is a Prakrata Bhakta, is not a good Bhakta. The real worship is one should worship God himself in his own heart. That is the Mukhya Puja. The Pratima Puja is the secondary always. That's why the people earlier, they did not do Pratima Puja. They used to worship Paramapurusha in all the humans. But gradually, the people, they did not have that kind of respect for the people. They did not want to worship Vishnu in the human bodies. Drishtva tesham mitho nrunam avajnanatmatam nrapa tretadisha harerarcha kriyaye kavibhi krata. Because people did not want to worship God in the humans' bodies, they created external archa. So at least some people, they do worship there. Okay, let them worship there. That is the intention of creating Devata Pratimas. In Madhvacharya is very clear. Agno Kriyavatam Vishnu Yoginam Hridaya Harihi. Vishnu, where is Vishnu? Vishnu is in the Agni for the persons who perform yajnas, and for the yogins, he is there in their own hearts. And Pratima Swaprabhuddhanam. Where is Vishnu? For the Aprabuddhas like us, it is only in the Pratimas. Sarvatra Viditatnam. But for the people who see God everywhere, He is everywhere. So you should not take the temple worship as a very important part of the Vedic Dharma. Vedic Dharma is worshipping Vishnu in their own way, in different ways. So such different ways are given to different kinds of people. Some people they prefer to worship Vishnu in the Agni, some people they worship in the Hridaya, some people they worship in the Archa, and some people they worship in the Andhara's body. Such kind of different kinds of worships are there. They are all changing when time changes. So the great people, rishis and acharyas, in those times, they prescribe different kinds of mm, archa, the puja vidhi for the people of those times. That's why we should not think that devata, though such devata puja and devata mandiras and everything is present in the Vedas, we should not think that is the most important feature of the Hinduism. So, but the main thesis of Patrick Olivelle is that devatas and devata mandiras were seen in suspicion and disdain by the Dharmashastras and Vedas. It is totally false and misleading. So this article appeared on 17th January 2024, but on the same day, Devdutt Patnaik also published another article, The Return of Idolatry. But Devdutt Patnaik he is not a scholar. He does not don a scholar's hat. He can be ignored. Nobody will take him very much serious. Though he may be wrong, many people might have taken him seriously. That is another question. But Patrick Olivelle is very well known and highly regarded for his work on early Indian religions and ascetic traditions. And Professor Patrick Olivelle is arguably the greatest living scholar of ancient India, as falsely claimed by the Ramchandra Guha and many people. This Patrick Olivelle is a good scholar. Of course, I agree. He has studied all these texts and he has translated and all this. He has done so many things. But this piece that he wrote is misleading. Indian tradition, Vedic Dharma was very much powerful and is powerful now also. And many people, the Buddhists came, Jains came, Charvakas came, and Muslims came. Everybody wanted to destroy the Vedic Dharma, but somehow all of them have failed in their mission. इस्लाम की जहाज गंगा में डूब गई, but the Western scholars are more successful, whereas all these people have failed. These people, the Western scholars, Indologists, they did not attack the Indian tradition from outside. These people entered the inner area in the disguise of study and interpretation. So everybody thought these are all our own people. Their interpretation must be very much true. And Max Muller was accepted by our people as Moksha Muller Bhatta. I don't know how he is creating a mula for the moksha. I don't know, but somehow these people were misled by the disguise of these Western scholars. So it may be coincidence that this piece was published a few days before the Ram Mandir Pratishta. But anyhow, the intention is very clear that they want to mislead Indian people. You should be very much careful. So we wrote our opinion in the print that Dharmashastras did not oppose. Our heading was "Don't look for temples in Dharmashastras." It was our opinion. It is printed in the print, and Patrick Olivelle again replied in This way, I want to thank Professor Veeranara and Pandurangi and V. Srinidhi for their thoughtful response to my column on the temples. Knowledge is enhanced by discussion, interaction, and even debate. That's what he meant. He did not reply, he did not contest that the Dharmashastras opposing the temples is wrong. That is important thing. At least that is what achieved by our reply, our opinion that was printed in the print. So I thought that I would write a big paper on the this theme, and I have written it. But again, I thank Professor Paturiji for giving me an opportunity to speak on the same thing here. Uh, so don't believe Indology or anything that is Western. Use if you want it. If you want to use it, simply use it, but never believe in their philosophy. This is what my caution to all our people. Here I end with Krishna Arpana, because it is Ekadashi, and the Indica Academy has given me a great opportunity to speak about to do seva of the Krishna. Sarvebhyo Namaha, Krishna Arpanamastu. तपस्वाध्याय शुश्रूषा कृष्ण पूजा रतम मुनिम विश्वेशम इष्टदम वंदे परिव्राट चक्रवर्तिनम.
Thank you very much, Professor Pandurangi. That was a very, very long and amazing and overwhelming marshalling of evidences, one after the other. Any Purva Paksha who made that kind of a mistake of making false and misleading claim would be completely drowning in the flood of evidences that you have shown through your presentation. That was such an overwhelming flooding of evidences, marshalling of them one after the other. Amazing way of presenting. This will be a model for many youngsters who would like to do such things. We are indebted to you for gracing this occasion. Ekadashi, Upavasa, and energy on this day may not be sufficient to make such a long presentation, but this shows your sadhana that on an Upadavasa day also you are able to spend so much of energy for presenting a very, very long paper. Thank you very much. With this, we come to the last part of this symposium. We end the symposium with a Shanti mantra. Om Sahana bhavatu sahano bhunaktu saha veeryam karavavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.